literally surviving mainly on tourism. So the other areas we should look at is advertising. I still find it very strange that tourists who are coming to Vic Falls will pay from Britain, leave the money there, they have the whole package, they come through South Africa, they carry their own fuel, everything, and all they do when they come to Livingstone is to buy hamburgers, and they go back, but where they paid money is somewhere else. I think we need to do something about that. We need to advertise as far as Europe so that we can also tap the tourists from that end. Tourists want to come where they see a lot of organization. So if we also tap that market in Britain, that's why we have embassies. They paid from there, and then we brought them to show them the tourist sites that we have. Surely we can do far much better. Zambia, fortunately, has a lot of very good tourist attractions, which when people come, they are shocked and they have never seen throughout their life. You look at the mighty Vic Falls. It's beautiful, but we are not yet where we should be in making money from the Vic Falls in Livingstone. So which means we need to do more to tap that money. And we need that revenue to improve a lot of sectors in the country. I'll start first with I've talked about advertising. Yes, we need to do more. Even within the country, we need to do more. Using Facebook, internet, we have all these gadgets so that we can really maximize on making, getting revenue from the tourism sector. Yes, we have improved. I mean, we do have now Radisson Blue, very beautiful. If you go there, it has added value. And we have done a number of things. Even, I'm told, if you go in Kafue National Park now, there are systems that are there to improve technology in cutting up the poachers and so forth. But still more, we still need to do more. We cannot relax, and this is what this report is talking about. We need to do more until we reach a level whereby we can actually, as a country, survive through tourism. It's a very good alternative, and I'm sure that's where this ministry is going to us to. Now, animals have also depleted. We need to restock more animals. That should be top on the agenda so that this can attract a lot of tourists. We also, like the other speaker said here, from Kanchibia, we have a number of tribes, and we have vast cultural backgrounds, which we can actually sell, which are very unique. If you go to Western Province, you have something different to see. That is beautiful. You come to Central Province, you go to Chinena Village, you have something beautiful to see. You move, you go to Eastern Province. So all these varieties, we are not selling them to the fullest. We need to sell them so that we can get the necessary revenue that we need as a country. So even if one good example is the Mpali soap. People are watching Mpali because of polygamy. All are glued, by 2030, they are glued on the TV. That's how much culture can also attract to tourists. Tourists want to have fun, watch, and have fun at the end of the day. Yeah. So read on these aspects, we need to do more like we have to. And then another area is to try also bring in technology in many aspects. Like animals, how do we detect the poachers? I have said we have started, but not to the fullest. This also will help us keep more animals, restock, so that we have more attractions which the tourists need. Especially, again, the cultural aspect. I remember when I was young, we would go to Livingstone. There were these beautiful cultural centers. And we didn't want to leave Livingstone. They were all over, but they are no longer there now. We need to bring them back so that we can attract the tourists. So for the committee, I think we have done a fantastic job. Because in anything, complacence will make you not improve. In business, if you think you are the best and then you don't add any other value, you will go down quickly. You should always be improving. That's the best approach you can take when you are running an organization. And that's why I'm saying the Ministry of Tourism, we need to do more to get more money. The duplication of taxes is a very serious thing. Sometimes you'll find when you go into business in this area, I think the Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry of Tourism should sit down and see how the duplication of taxes can be avoided. Most businessmen will feel they are being pulled down when they are beginning. And that's not very good. So you would find if you open a business today, this entity comes, they want a license. This entity comes, they want a license. Why should you have 8, 9 licenses for one business? So which license then is allowing you to operate? So these can be put in one. And this is what even other investors don't want, wasting a lot of time to start a business. So duplication of taxes, which the report have said should be looked into so that it is sorted out forever. And then that will encourage more people to go into this area of investment. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
The Honorable Member for Chama South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's a saying that doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result is insanity. This is, I'm sure, if not my 5th or 10th debate on the tourism sector. We are talking the same thing year in, year out. Are we normal? Honorable Speaker, I say this, I ask this question.
Honorable Member, that wait.
No, I'm saying normal. Normal is not unparliamentary. Why I've said this, I'm saying this with my sad thoughts. These are things that duplication of licenses in the tourism sector. If we are to check your reports, Honorable Speaker, you will realize that these are things that we have been talking about year in, year out. Why are we not addressing them? Honorable Speaker, we should be serious as citizens of this country. We have what we call one border post, where we had agreed that, I think 4 or 5 years ago, that we need to streamline the operations of our tourism agencies. But your report is bringing back the same issues. What is wrong? Honorable Speaker, it's really a sad day for me, especially that the Minister of Tourism is not here. When debating such a report, we expected the Minister of Tourism to be seated there. I'll give an example of what is going on in Livingstone. When the provincial headquarters for Southern Province were shifted from Livingstone into Choma, the people of Livingstone, who solely dependent on tourism activities, have been left into abject poverty. These are facts. Go and check our relatives, our brothers and sisters who are running lodges in Livingstone, if they have the same number of occupants. Most of them probably are going days without food. What is it that we are doing to ensure that our people who are dependent on tourism activities have a livelihood? This is what we should be talking. Not only that, even the things that we are trying to promote, it's like we believe that a tourist should always be a European or an American. What type of people are we, Honorable Speaker? Actually, we can even give visa waivers to Europeans and Americans, leaving out our fellow Africans. What type of human beings are we? Zimbabweans should be able to come into this country freely. Egyptians should be able to come into this country freely. South Africans. Even when we sign what we call CASA agreements.
Honorable Member, I think I would advise you to stick to the report. Because certain things that you are talking about are things that are out of context. You're talking about visas. Visas are issued based on mutual understanding between two states, the hosting and the receiving state. There are some states there are some countries, especially European countries, they are given visas on a point of entry. It's an agreement that Zambia has. And there are also security implications. It could be an African country, but there are certain concerns as a state that we look at, or what the state looks at before allowing someone at the point of entry. So let's not contradict ourselves. Let's just stick to the report.
Honorable Speaker, we are talking about tourism. Whether we like it or not, one of the ways of promoting tourism is by granting the states that we want to attract into your country, giving them incentives. And we've given some of the countries incentives like visa-free. They're able to enter this country freely. But my point of argument is that we should be able to promote or give the capacity to our fellow Africans to enjoy the diversity that we have as Africans. That should be the starting point. I'll give an example. Many of us believe that modernization is westernization. Thereby, we are forgetting the potential that lies within our own country. No wonder the seconder indicated that if you go to Cassava Bay, check the figures at Ministry of Transport, you find that millions and millions were spent to build that Cassava Bay airstrip there. But do we have the airstrip at Cassava Bay? The answer is no. Actually, we should be talking about attracting investment. For me, I believe in local investment. This idea of thinking that someone will come from somewhere to go and build hospitality facilities, for example, in Chama or in Ikeleng, is the wrong idea. It is us who should be able, as Zambians, to go and build facilities there, so that our people can go and enjoy, probably appreciate the culture that exists. How much money do we put in terms of preservation of our own ways of life? If you go to these so-called developed countries, I'll give an example, China. You'll be paying money just to be shown how they've preserved their caves. Just that activity. Just to climb. Few ministers here have gone to the site in China where they are showing us how their ancestors lived. But if you look at Zambia, we have the best landmass. We have the best protected areas. We have the best environment. Why have we not put investment, for example, in our national parks? We have Kafue National Park. We have North Ruangwa, South Ruangwa. If you are to check how many Zambians are participating, probably none. So, Madam Speaker, the challenge, Honorable Speaker, the challenge that I want to pose to all of us is what is it that we are doing to ensure that our local Zambians are financially capable to drive the tourism sector? Before we even look at the international visitors, have we invested enough in terms of training for the people to explain to the visitors when they come? Probably the answer is no. And yet we've got animals. When you take a foreigner, you just waste 32 or 40 minutes explaining on the importance of one tree before you even explain how an impala lives. It's another, by the time they realize they have one day, they want to continue the second day. We need to go into all this training. Have we invested into that as a nation? The answer is no. So we should start introspecting. Are we adding value to this country through the way we apply our knowledge as leaders. Honorable Speaker, I wish quickly this government should resolve the licensing issues. I submit, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member from Mbabala. The Honorable Member for Feira.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just also want to thank the committee for its work. I thank the mover of the motion as well as the seconder in looking at how effective, the strategies in the tourism sector can be developed so that Zambia enjoys the resources that come from the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, I just want to add on what has already been said, that as a country, even as we develop strategies, obviously we are trying to see how the tourism sector contributes to the national economic growth and how we control the resources that arise from the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, I'm privileged to come from a district that also has tourism potential, but it has tourist facilities, and like Honorable Kamboni submitted, most of these tourism facilities are run by foreigners or people coming from outside. What has happened is that their bank accounts, which I think is very key, are domiciled in foreign countries and not in Zambia. They would maintain a very small account just for purpose of paying small salaries and so forth. I think it's very important as we develop these strategies to deal with this problem. If you go to Mfue, it will be the same story. Lower Zambezi is the same story. And most of our money, we are unable to account for it. So even as we talk about when the government has funds, that's when we do this. I think that the tourism sector, every day, we lose a lot of money. A lot of people pay as much as $1,000 just to come and catch a tiger fish in Luangwa River or in Zambezi River. Now, if you have 10 tourists, that's 10,000 already. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to submit that it's very important. Even as the other report on illicit financial flows indicated, the tourism sector also suffers from that aspect. Mr. Speaker, under the CEC, or Citizen Economic Empowerment Commission, there is a fund to develop local tourism as run by Zambians. I think that we need to develop that strategy to a level where Zambians will take charge of this. And perhaps we will be able not to talk about the loss of the revenue through these illegal financial flows. What has been happening is that huge amounts of money are banked out of the country, and indeed, Zambia loses out. At the end of the day, we are unable to detect how much our services or our facilities were able to make. For instance, even my local district council just benefits 49,000 kwacha annually from the tour operators, and they give reasons that we are not making losses, but this has been for decades and decades. A lot of money has been realized, because if they are not making money, they could have actually by now left. So I do not wish to add on, because my colleagues have already said a lot. Suffice to say that even as we do support the tourism sector, but some of the factors, in particular, issues to do with animals, this presents us the issue of human-animal conflict. It's a real situation, because then, when we talk about this issue, it will look like we are actually undermining tourism. But the truth is that we need to ensure that, or the Ministry of Tourism needs to ensure that, even as we promote tourism, the issue of human-animal conflict is dealt with adequately. And indeed, should be dealt with as a cross-cutting issue when it comes to promoting tourism. Otherwise, then we'll have an antagonism. So, finally, it's my submission that the Ministry of Finance and National Planning must take up the challenge to ensure that immediately all bank accounts by the tour operators are domiciled in Zambia. Because it doesn't make sense. I think it's very important because we cannot be promoting tourism. We bring in foreign investors who actually open accounts because the main thing actually is the money. So my submission is that the Ministry of Finance should ensure that our banks, actually are full of bank accounts by these foreign tour as a rule and actually as a law which must be enacted and brought before this House. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Katuba.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving the people of Katuba an opportunity to comment and debate on this report. Mr. Speaker, the industry we are looking at today is in excess of $1 trillion globally, and receives global arrivals just below 1 billion people. And many of the countries are depending on this industry for sustainability. Mr. Speaker, tourism in Zambia is the second largest employer, only second to agriculture. There is a saying that for every 10 to 11 people that are employed, at least 1 or 2 come from the tourism sector. So this is a very important sector that we need to harness. One of the strategic leaders once said that tourism nourishes and refreshes, while mining and the mineral industry diminishes. And he was asking a question on where anybody who is looking at the future of a country would invest their efforts on. We need to continue to implore, and it is good that the report is looking at opportunities of how we can implore this sector and make it start contributing to the growth of the economy. Currently, if you look at the growth in Zambia, we are slightly before 3% in terms of growth of the tourism, in terms of contribution of the tourism sector to the global or to the national economy. Many of the times we will start appreciating the impact of tourism on the economy when we start growing at about 5 to 7%. That means that we will now see the real fruits of tourism. But for this to happen, Mr. Speaker, we need to put up deliberate strategies and plans to ensure that this sector, which is a sleeping giant, can wake up and grow our economy exponentially. I want to implore the UPND New Dawn government on the continuous increase in the investment of tourism marketing. If you look from the figures, this part of budget used to receive not more than $1 million or $1.5 million annually, which is a drop in the ocean when you look at global promotion, because this will only mean maybe 13 series on BBC or CNN and the budget is gone. It was pleasing to see that the 2023 budget had in excess of $5 million put together investing in tourism promotion. I think we are putting resources where it matters most. Zambia is strategically positioned, Mr. Speaker, well known to be one of the most peaceful countries on the continent of Africa. And of course, arguably, they say actually Zambia is one of the most attractive because most of our products in the tourism sector are eco-friendly, meaning they are more sustainable, they are not man-made, they are all given to us by God himself. And that makes our tourism more sustainable. So when we look at these products, we need to plan them. We need to use them in a more sustainable manner so that today, Mr. Speaker, we may achieve our objectives using tourism by fighting poverty. Who knows that 20 years, 30 years from now, the country will be so rich that people will use tourism for recreation, for recharging their batteries, and for increasing their productivity. So we really need to use this very sustainably. We are known for our own special brand of hospitality. If you go across the world, many of the visitors will tell you how friendly Zambians are and how they will go out of their way to assist tourists when they arrive in the country. However, Mr. Speaker, there is one thing that we need to work on as a country. If not many, but at least one that I would like to mention now. And that is improving, increasing, and modifying both our road and air transport. It is very difficult, more especially if you are a long-haul traveler. It is one of the most expensive destinations because you have to connect through different hubs. And one of the issues of hubbing, Mr. Speaker, to increase tourist arrivals is to ensure that you put one of your airports as one that takes people to the world and brings people from the world to redistribute them in Africa. And we see the major hubs today that if you look at Johannesburg, for example, receiving approximately 11 million people per annum because they are capable of taking people to the world and bringing people from the world to Johannesburg and redistribute them on the continent. We need really to re-strategize and see, because there is no country, 195 countries, tourist destinations on the global frame, Mr. Speaker, and there is none that is known to be a great tourist destination without a flourishing airline. It is not possible in the tourism sector. Those countries that you find that might not be doing well, first thing, look at their airline, the way it is doing. You'll find that it is also struggling. And I've always argued, Mr. Speaker, that most of the destinations don't put airlines purely for profitability. An airline is a loss leader. Sometimes it makes a few of losses, but what it does to the tourism sector, to the agricultural sector, to the mining sector is so much, such that when you look at the small loss it is making to the benefits the country is getting through profiling and repositioning the country in the global market is so much the benefit that you tend to undergo the loss. In one time in 2010, Mr. Speaker, when South Africa was going the biggest loss, South African airline, and the minister said it is not possible to shut it down because shutting it down is shutting the economy of South Africa. So we must really rethink on how, if we really want to grow this sector, how we can reposition it and how we can really look at the airline and how we can, which model we can use. Is it the private sector driven model that is supported by government, or is it a government driven model that is fully owned by government? Both work. Kenyan Airways has the private sector model. South Africa has the government's channeled model, and we have seen that both are working. I wanted to comment on this, and I would like to end, Mr. Speaker, by saying that truly tourism flourishes when the mining sector diminishes. And if we need to be leaders of the future, we need to look at where it sustains, and tourism is the right place to invest. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Chitambo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving chance to the people of Chitambo to comment on this very important motion. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, to thank the chairman and this committee for a good job that they've done. Chitambo, Mr. Speaker, is also a hub of tourist attraction. We boast of Kasanka National Park, the Bangweulu wetlands, and we also have the David Livingstone Memorial Site. Mr. Speaker, I have thanked the chairman of the committee because the tourism sector is not one sector that you can comment without looking at other important sectors of the economy. So for the committee to pick on this motion, they had a very big duty to do, because this is a sector which requires a multi-sectoral approach in order to bring sanity and the revenue that this country requires. Mr. Speaker, for countries that have developed well and they have achieved much in tourism, the first people who are tourists are the indigenous citizens of that country. So if we are to see tourism grow in this country, we need first to change the culture of our people, where we should start saving and going out for holidays in our own country. Mr. Speaker, many a times that even when ourselves we close Parliament, you'd find that your members prefer going outside Zambia other than being in our own country to develop our own tourism. So I'm urging Zambians to inculcate a mind in the new generation, which is our children, of saving and wanting to see what this country has to show. Mr. Speaker, your committee and your report on page 11, if you look at it, it's got very good information, and if this is implemented, it will definitely and for sure open up the northern circuit. They are saying the following road projects were earmarked for development. They are looking at the Mbala-Kasaba Bay Road, earmarked for upgrading to bituminous standard. Also the Mporokoso-Nsama via Mutunda, gate to Kaputa. They are also talking about the leading to Nsumbu National Park. Mr. Speaker, one thing that I've noted here is that your committee should have gone further to interrogate the ministry responsible so that this report should have contained the time frames in which these projects will be done, so that as a nation, there's an assurance that this will be done. But nevertheless, we shall wait for the action taken report to see whether government will respond to this very wonderful report. Mr. Speaker, many have talked about the infrastructure in the tourism sector. Indeed, it is very true that our infrastructure in its current status is quite bad. And I know that successive governments have paid little attention to advance the infrastructure in the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, if you go to Chiawa, you discover that you won't have network services there. Telecommunication will have a challenge at certain lodges and so on and so forth. Similarly, in my own constituency, if you went to Chipundu, you want to see where David Livingstone is buried, you'll be struggling just to use your phone. So, Mr. Speaker, we are urging the government, and I'm happy that the minister came here and told us that they will roll out about 300 towers. I hope most of them will go into the sites where tourism is. Another component that demotivates tourists to go into these areas is the connectivity to electricity, the national grid. Most of these places are expensive because they run on diesel. You can imagine, Mr. Speaker, you are managing a lodge. For you to just clock a month on diesel is quite a huge bill. So you'd find that most places become expensive because of the overhead costs that they incur in managing these places. Mr. Speaker, I do recall the President giving a directive to the Ministry of Lands that most cultural places should be given title deeds. I will be looking forward, Mr. Speaker, to seeing this coming to pass, because should title deeds be given to all cultural places, it means that we have preserved culture in this country for the next generation. Because very soon you might discover that some of the cultures will be diminishing. For example, if you look at the arena where the Mutomboko ceremony takes place, if that place was given a title deed, it will mean that no one will tamper with that area. It will remain meant for Mutomboko, and the people can go and see that arena if it is well preserved and well maintained. In your report, Mr. Speaker, I saw where your committee went and interrogated the management at Kasanka National Park. And I like their recommendation because they are saying there is non-coordination between the stakeholders. I think, Mr. Speaker, the people of Chitambo would end here. Thank you.
Thank you. Three ministers will respond to this report. We'll start with the Minister of Green Economy and Environment, followed by the Minister of Water, Development and Sanitation, and finally the Acting Minister of Tourism will conclude.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank you sincerely for this opportunity. I want to add my voice as well, but I'll concentrate on two particular issues. And these are protection of the ecosystems, the water systems, and the legislation, in particular the Water Act and the Forest Act number 4, 2015. I've been compelled, the Honorable Mr. Speaker, to say a few things because most of us are debating on basically infrastructure, roads, and everything else to go and see the animals. But this report, and I must commend the committee for such a detailed report, it brings out two salient features which I think all honorable members must pay attention to. The first one, Mr. Speaker, on page 23, it says, let's intensify efforts to protect ecologically sensitive water recharge areas. The committee further recommended that in order to maintain the status of a water-secure country, government should without fail declare all sensitive water recharge areas as protected areas to prevent further deterioration of ecosystems. This is telling, Mr. Speaker. And I would like the House to know that the Minister of Green Economy and Environment, working with the Minister of Water and Sanitation, want to put a huge premium on this. It has been observed, Mr. Speaker, in the whole country that land is being given willy-nilly. Even land which protects the water systems is being given away. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, we need to look at this very, very closely. The report also talks about enhancing public awareness on the need to protect the water sources. On page 27, Mr. Speaker, it talks about curbing illegal sand mining at the Magoye River. It says Magoye was already a degraded river that flowed only during the rain season due to siltation and degradation, Mr. Speaker, caused by anthropogenic activities around the river, such as gardening, tree cutting for charcoal burning, farming, and sand mining. Mr. Speaker, this is being observed across the length and breadth of the country. Farming actually and sand mining are being done right on the riverbanks. This is leading to a lot of siltation. This is leading to rivers flowing few months than they used to be in those days. Mr. Speaker, the example of Magoye River, and the Minister, Honorable Mposha, will tell you, is a sorry sight. I think the Member of Parliament, Honorable Mwemba here, will tell you. That's a area where GIZ, working with the Minister of Water Development and Minister of Green Economy and Environment, have embarked on a project to restore that ecosystem. Mr. Speaker, animals, cattle in that area are suffering. Production of cattle is going down. It's the same, Mr. Speaker, across the length and breadth of the country. Wild animals are continuously being deprived of their food, the grass, of the water resource, thereby decreasing the stocks in these areas. Another issue, Mr. Speaker, I would like to bring across is on page 22, which talks of the review of the Water Resources Management Act. And it talks about Forest Act number 4 of 2015, which has mandated the Forest Department under the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment to degazette forests without the Ministry of Water Development and Sanitation. Indeed, the committee also observed that the Water Resources Act was not in harmony with the Forest Act number 4 of 2015. Indeed, the case in point, as highlighted in the report, is that the Forest Act mandated the Forest Department under the ministry to degazette forests without consulting the Ministry of Water Development and Sanitation. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, the current law mandates the Forest Department under my ministry to degazette forests, but in strict observance and adherence to the following parts and clauses in the Forest Act number 4 of 2015. Part 3, in particular, forest management and development, meaning the national forests. The purpose of the national forests on this matter, the law in section 12 states that, subject to the other provisions of the Act, all land comprised in a national forest shall be used for the security of forest resources of national importance, the conservation of ecosystems and biological diversity, improved forest resource management and sustainable utilization of forest resources, and number D, the management of major water catchments and headwaters subject to the Water Resources Management Act number Forest Management Act 2011. Mr. Speaker, this clearly indicates that particular attention is paid to the nature and characteristics of each individual forest to be degazetted. The enforcement also considers the prescribed law in other relevant legislations such as the Water Resources Management Act. The Forest Act further restricts any activities that deals with camping, residing, building, or construction of any road or structure in any forest area. For any excision, Mr. Speaker, or degazation to take place, the precautionary principle should always and is always taken into account to determine the sustainability development, utilization, and conservation, biological diversity, and the best scientific information available. This is in order to maintain a fair distribution of economic, social, health, and environmental benefits from the forests. Further, Mr. Speaker, Section 19 of the Forest Act states that subject to the other provisions of this Act and any other written law, all land comprised in a local forest shall be used for the conservation and development of forests, again states for the protection of ecosystems, particularly the protection of land and water supplies of local strategic importance. Mr. Speaker, it is therefore evident that importance is attached to the water resource in relation to forest management and development. Mr. Speaker, I was compelled to comment on this matter because this House should play a very, very important role in ensuring that there's advocacy, there's communication to our people to protect these forest reserves. For us to develop the tourism sector, we need to ensure that the environment is a healthy environment, that the environment provides the necessary ecosystem services, not only to our people, but to those animals themselves. The Forest Act ensures one of the main issues of those forests, the protected forests, is to protect the headwaters, is to ensure that there's a continuous flow of water. And for us to develop the tourism sector, we need to ensure that our water resource is protected, that our vegetation is protected, that those trees which provide shelter to our wild animals are protected. So it's not only about roads and infrastructure to go and see those animals. It's about ensuring that we have a growing population of these animals. It's about ensuring that the animals have enough water, they have enough grass, that they are healthy. Mr. Speaker, with these few remarks, I wish to support completely the committee's report and commend them for a job well done. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Water Development and Sanitation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice in congratulating the mover and the seconder of this motion, and also congratulating the entire committee for the good job they have done on this report. Mr. Speaker, let me also hasten to state that government, through my ministry, appreciates the work of the committee and the recommendations contained in its report regarding the issues of energy, water development, and tourism in the country. Let me also thank all those who took time to add their voices to the report. Although, Mr. Speaker, I note that while the report is on energy, water development, and tourism, I think the focus was more on one item without taking into account that water is an enabler to various sectors, including tourism. But all the same, I want to thank all those who debated this report. Mr. Speaker, allow me to respond to some of the selected issues contained in the report. On the issue of operationalizing the Water Resource Management Act number 21 of 2011, which is contained on page 20, government through my ministry is already taking some steps to improve the management and development of water resources, as well as the provision of water supply and sanitation services in the country. I would like, Mr. Speaker, to take this opportunity to reaffirm government's commitment to addressing the issues raised by the committee, which among others include the constituting of decentralized water resources management structures in accordance with the Water Resources Management Act number 21 of 2011. Review of the Water Resources Management Act, review of the 2010 National Water Policy, acquisition of title deeds for commercial utility properties, and bringing on board more players to supply the water treatment chemicals to the commercial utilities. Mr. Speaker, in reference to the committee's observation on page 21, I would like to report to this August House that the ministry has made significant progress concerning the development of regulations which will constitute the water catchment councils, sub-catchment councils, and water user associations. The August House may wish to note that the ministry engaged the Ministry of Justice on this matter, and we have been guided that the regulations be submitted to Cabinet for clearance, and my ministry has since commenced the process of submitting the said regulations. Regarding the review of the Water Resources Management Act, as contained on page 22 of your report, Mr. Speaker, the ministry has written to the Ministry of Justice to commence the review process of the Act. As soon as the ministry receives feedback from Ministry of Justice, the ministry will be able to commence the review of the WAMA Act. Mr. Speaker, as regards to update on the 2010 national water policy as contained on page 24. I wish to report to this House on the review of the said policy that my ministry has concluded the review of the 2010 national policy and has since submitted the policy to Cabinet Office for clearance. With respect to the acquisition of title deeds for the commercial water utilities as contained on page 28, Mr. Speaker, my ministry has directed all our 11 commercial water utility companies to expedite acquisition of title deeds for the land on which their properties are located. I would also further wish to report that commercial water utilities have commenced engagements with various local authorities and the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources on this matter. On item number 17 on page 29, Mr. Speaker, I wish to update this August House concerning the exploration of other means of procuring water treatment chemicals. During the European Union Zambia Forum, which was hosted by Zambia, my ministry undertook the promotion of investment opportunities with regard to setting up plants that could produce water treatment chemicals within the country. As you may be aware, Mr. Speaker, government attaches great importance to water resources development and management, as well as water supply and sanitation, considering the critical role that water and adequate sanitation continue to play in fostering socio-economic development in our country. In this regard, government will endeavor to ensure the review of the National Water Policy and Water Resources Management Act are expedited. Government will also ensure that the statutory instruments on the establishment of decentralized structures are promulgated, including the acquisition of title deeds by the water utility companies. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I wish to make an earnest appeal to the honorable members of Parliament to support the ministry in curbing vandalism of water infrastructure, which is being put up at a huge cost, as well as encroachment of water sources and recharge zones, as was the case on Forest 27. This is critical in ensuring continued water supply and sanitation service provision, as well as sustainable management and utilization of water resources in our country. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank you.
The Acting Minister of Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I start by thanking you for giving me this opportunity to speak before this August House on the observations and recommendations made by your Committee on Energy, Water Development and Tourism in particular. Tourism sector development and the effectiveness of tourism development strategies in Zambia. May I also thank the committee for the fine report which has raised issues that would help the tourism sector move forward and meaningfully contribute to the country's economic transformation and job creation. Mr. Speaker, the committee generally observed that the sector has underdeveloped tourism-related infrastructure, limited investment, both local and foreign investors, limited tourism product offering range and scope, inadequate tourism promotion and marketing, low participation by locals in direct and indirect tourism development, and that Zambia is being perceived as high-cost destination among other challenges. Mr. Speaker, this observation is acknowledged, and government, through my ministry, is working towards addressing these challenges, and some positive strides have been made so far. But let me address some specific issues that have been raised in this report. On registration of businesses and cooperatives, your committee, Mr. Speaker, noted that most citizens are finding it difficult to participate in small and medium enterprise business in tourism industry due to registration challenges, as the process is highly centralized, and recommended the amendment and review of the Cooperative Society Act, Chapter 397 of the Laws of Zambia, and the Patents Act number 40 of 2016, so that registration bottlenecks are addressed by decentralizing the registration process. Mr. Speaker, this is noted, and the ministry will engage the responsible ministries where the acts are domiciled to address the challenges. Mr. Speaker, on multiple licensing, the committee observed that there are too many licensing fees and taxes required to be paid by our tour operators and other tourism industry sector players, which has operational costs, and recommended a comprehensive study and review to establish various licensing fees and taxes existing in the sector, with a view for restructuring them in order to reduce the cost of doing business. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to inform this House that in 2021, the Ministry had already engaged the Business Regulatory Review Agency, who conducted a comprehensive study to establish the number of licensing fees paid by tour operators, and this is in line with the committee's observations. The Ministry has engaged other institutions charging license fees to consider harmonizing the fees. The Ministry, on its part, identified Tourism and Hospitality Act number 13 of 2015 and will soon propose review of the Act. On enhancement of destination marketing and tourism product diversification, Mr. Speaker, the committee observed that the marketing of Zambia's various tourism products is inadequate and limited to waterfalls and wildlife. The committee urged the ministry to undertake extensive and effective destination marketing to increase awareness and demand, develop tourism products from natural, use information and communication technology for marketing, and develop a marketing strategy. Mr. Speaker, the ministry is aware about the skewed tourism marketing towards waterfalls and wildlife, and has included the marketing of other products such as culture, which includes traditional ceremonies, food, art, and festivals. B, adventure, water activities, camping, backpacking, bungee jumping, gourd swing, and leisure. C, safari camps, game drive, national parks, bat migration, and wildebeest migration within wildlife. D, monuments and sites, museums. And E, meetings, incentives, conferences, and events. In sport, the country hosted a number of events such as the Confederation of African Athletics of under 18 and under 20, and the Barcelona Legends versus the 2012 AFCON winner Legends, which attracted spectators from outside Zambia. However, to host these events, we need to invest in sport infrastructure and accommodation. On marketing, the ministry, employing online digital platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Further, the ministry is making use of tourism expos such as the Tourism Expo at ITB, Indaba Tourism Expos, to market Zambia as preferred tourism destination of choice. The ministry is conducting familiarization tours for the media and destination marketing agents from targeted tourist source markets in conjunction with the Zambia missions abroad as part of the marketing strategy. On revision of functions of Zambia Tourism Agency, Mr. Speaker, the committee observed with concern that the mandates of the Zambia Tourism Agency, that is, to market Zambia as a tourist destination of choice and also to regulate the tourism industry, are too demanding to be undertaken by the agency. The committee urged the Ministry of Tourism to streamline the role of the agency to marketing and identify another department to regulate the sector. Mr. Speaker, the ministry acknowledges this observation and recommendations. Although the two functions are implemented by one institution, they fall under different departments. The Ministry of Tourism also carry out the regulatory function. The private sector has raised the concern of ZTA carrying out the functions of marketing and regulation. The ministry has noted the concerns, but currently the Tourism and Hospitality Act of 2015 mandates them to do so on capacity building programs. The committee observed that the tourism and hospitality industry is lacking the competitive technical staff to service the tourism industry in comparison with other countries within the region. To this effect, the committee urged the ministry to come up with regulations to urge all enterprises offering tourism and hospitality services to periodically sponsor their staff, technical staff, for refresher courses. Mr. Speaker, the ministry acknowledges the observation and is also concerned. The ministry is in discussion with various stakeholders for the possibility of establishing a regulatory body that will address the issues raised and others. The ministry is very proactive on issues of capacity building in the tourism sector. The ministry, not too long ago, in collaboration with UNWTO, held an Education Skills Summit, which now annual event. The ministry is also capacitating Zambia Institute of Tourism and Hospitality Studies on improved information on arts products and services. Mr. Speaker, the committee observed that information about arts products and services is not provided before the arrival of the tourists in the country. The committee urged the ministry through ZTA to enhance product marketing by providing information on arts products and services to the tourists before arrival in the country, as this has the potential to lead to increasing their length of stay. Mr. Speaker, this is well acknowledged. The ministry through ZTA will ensure that product marketing information on art products and services will be included in the packages being marketed to the tourists before arrival in the country. On increased presence of arts and crafts at tourism sites. Mr. Speaker, the committee observed that there is general lack of arts and crafts products in most tourist sites and that few sites have crafts market. The committee also observed that in the northern tourism circuit, the situation is worse, as most crafts are traded in appropriate spaces, often on the roadside. The committee recommended that. I've got quite a bit to say. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Sesheke, wind-up debate.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity once again to wind up debate. And from onset, Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you to all the debaters that have ably debated this report. I just want to highlight a few take notes to the minister. One of the main reasons why the tourism sector in Zambia is not growing on the domestic tourism aspect of it, it's the cost of doing business. Secondly, it's the pricing itself. We urge the ministry to come up with a deliberate policy to have a two-tier pricing so as to enable domestic tourism to grow. Secondly, I want to urge the following ministries also to emulate what so far the Minister of Youth and Sports have been able to achieve, of course, as well as the Minister of Tourism itself on the means. The Minister of Youth and Sports have demonstrated on the sports-based tourism. I would like to urge also the Minister of Health also to scale up on the health-based tourism. We cannot be flying in and out of the country to access certain, operations that could easily be done here if only we could upscale on the specialties that we need. I want to also urge the Minister of Education. Education-based tourism also is very important. We cannot be sending people to Europe and other countries to go and acquire certain qualifications when we have able lecturers, when we have able teachers here in Zambia. Finally, I want to thank one particular man who I want to encourage to be debating more often, the Honorable Member for Katuba, for having, ably debated and giving statistical and practical examples that I'm pretty sure if the acting minister was ably listening, he would have picked one or two issues that are very, very, very important. I also want to engage, lobby further the Minister of Water to ensure that they work together, they collaborate with the Minister of Green Economy and ensure that these catchment areas, the issue of land degradation should be a thing of the past. Let's speed up the process in these pieces of legislation that have been in the shelves for a very long time, Minister of Water and Tourism. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I thank you so much.
Thank you. I put the question. The question is that this House do adopt the report of the Committee on Energy, Water Development, Tourism on tourism sector development and the effectiveness of tourism in development strategies in Zambia for the second session of the 13th National Assembly laid on the table of the House on Friday, 23rd June 2023. As many of that opinion say aye, of the contrary say no, the ayes have it. The question is resolved in the affirmative. The clerk will now read the order of the day.
Report of the Committee on National Guidance and Gender Matters, motion of 27th June, resumption of debate.
When business was interrupted yesterday, Wednesday, 28th June 2023, the House was considering the motion moved by the Honorable Member for Kalomo Central that this House do adopt a report on the Committee of National Guidance and Gender Matters on achieving the 50-50 gender parity in governance and decision-making position in Zambia for the second session of the 13th National Assembly laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 14th June 2023. And the Honorable Member for Kalomo Central had just finishing wind-up debate. I put the question. The question is that this House do adopt a report of the Committee on National Guidance and Gender Matters on achieving the 50-50 gender parity in governance and decision-making positions in Zambia for the second session of the 13th National Assembly laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 14th June 2023. As many are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary say no. The ayes have it. The question is resolved in the affirmative. Her Honor, the Vice President, adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the House do now adjourn.
The question is that the House now do adjourn. Any debate? Any objection? The question is agreed to. The House. Is now adjourned.
There you have it. The House has since adjourned. We have more business tomorrow, on Friday, starting at 09 hours. It's that time where we get to look at business that has been considered on the floor of the House, starting at 14:30 hours. Madam Speaker did permit the Minister of Energy to render a ministerial statement on the fuel supply situation in the country. This is arising from a matter of urgent public importance raised by Honorable Christopher Kangombe, Member of Parliament for Kanfinsa.
The Minister said that in June 2023, the Ministry of Energy, through daily stock monitoring, observed with growing concern low importation of petrol by oil marketing companies. The main reason advanced by the oil marketing companies for the said low imports is the alleged non-responsive pricing mechanism, adding that the low petrol stocks in the month of June have been further exacerbated by Indeni refinery being on a shutdown from June 15, 2023.
And so the Minister did say that in order to address the low petrol stock position in the immediate term, the government, through the Ministry of Energy, has ensured that Indeni refinery resumes operations. The refinery resumed its operations on Sunday, 25th June 2023, and the first batch of 700,000 litres of petrol was produced from the refinery and pumped over